I never imagined the walls of a bank would one day feel like the walls of a prison. The cool air smelled faintly of polished marble and ink, and every footstep echoed like a warning. My daughter's grip was firm on my wrist, her nails digging into my skin as if she thought I might try to run. The way she held me, possessive, commanding, wasn't how a daughter should hold her mother. It was how a thief holds onto her prize. Her heels clicked sharply across the floor as she guided me toward the manager's office, her chin high, her expression flawless. To the world, she looked like the perfect daughter helping her widowed mother manage complicated finances. But to me, every step felt like a march toward my own destruction. I tried to keep my breathing steady, but my chest rose and fell unevenly, my pulse racing with the dread of what awaited behind that door. We entered the office of Mr. Anthony Roberts, the branch manager. His desk was neat, his suit well-fitted, and his expression professional yet kind. He rose to greet us, extending his hand first to me. "Mrs. Sullivan, it's a pleasure to meet you, though I wish it were under happier circumstances. I'm sorry for your loss." His voice carried genuine warmth, and for a brief moment I felt seen, not as a widow, not as a burden, but as a person still deserving of respect. I opened my mouth to respond, but before I could, Victoria spoke, her voice polished like glass. "Thank you, Mr. Roberts. We appreciate your condolences, but we're here to finalize my mother's affairs. She's decided to transfer management of her accounts and property to me. My father always wanted things streamlined, and this is the most efficient way forward." Her delivery was flawless, like she'd rehearsed it in the mirror. She even added a small laugh, as though it were all routine, nothing unusual, nothing to question. Mr. Roberts gestured for us to sit. I sank into the leather chair, my hands trembling slightly as I folded them in my lap. Victoria sat beside me, legs crossed elegantly, her confidence radiating in every movement. On the desk lay the documents. Stacks of neatly printed pages, each one filled with legal terms I barely understood. A pen rested on top, waiting for my hand. It looked harmless, but I knew it wasn't. Signing those papers would mean giving up everything Robert and I had built, everything I had left. Mr. Roberts adjusted his glasses. "Mrs. Sullivan, I always make sure our clients fully understand what they're signing. These are important documents. Would you like me to walk you through them?" I opened my mouth, but Victoria's hand covered mine instantly, squeezing hard. "That won't be necessary," she said smoothly. "We've already gone over everything. Haven't we, Mother?" She turned her head toward me, her smile fixed, but her eyes flashing a warning. I swallowed hard, the words caught in my throat. "Yes," I whispered, though even to my own ears it sounded uncertain. Mr. Roberts didn't look convinced. He leaned forward slightly, lowering his voice. "Mrs. Sullivan, do you have your reading glasses with you? It's a lot of fine print, and I wouldn't want you to miss anything." I shook my head. "No, I didn't bring them." Victoria's grip tightened. "She doesn't need them. I'll explain everything if she has questions. Really, there's no need to drag this out." But Mr. Roberts didn't hand me the pen. He kept his eyes on me, steady, unblinking. "Mrs. Sullivan, with all due respect, I insist we go through this line by line. It's bank policy to ensure all parties understand what they're signing." Victoria's jaw twitched, her perfect composure slipping for just a second. "That's unnecessary," she snapped before quickly softening her tone. "I mean, of course we trust the bank, but my mother is tired. She just wants this over with." He ignored her. Slowly, deliberately, he began to read. His voice filled the room, each word heavy, each clause sharper than the last. The documents weren't about convenience. They weren't about efficiency. They were power of attorney papers, transferring all financial control to Victoria. Not shared, not conditional, absolute. Once I signed, I would have no authority over my accounts, my property, even decisions about my own care. My breath caught in my throat. I turned my head slightly, watching Victoria from the corner of my eye. She was smiling, but her nails were biting into my hand so hard it hurt. "See, Mother?" she whispered, her tone low and threatening. "This is just legal language. Don't embarrass me. Sign it." Embarrass her. That's what she cared about. Not my future, not my security, just her image. Mr. Roberts paused mid-sentence and looked at me. "Mrs. Sullivan, do you want to sign these papers? You don't have to. You have every right to decline." Silence filled the room, broken only by the ticking of the clock on the wall. Victoria's eyes were burning into me, but for the first time, I felt a shift inside myself. For months I had been adrift, grieving, vulnerable, desperate for guidance. But now someone was giving me a choice. Someone was asking what I wanted, and I realized I still had a voice. That I straightened slightly in my chair, my hand trembling as I pulled it free from Victoria's grasp. "I'd like to think about it," I said softly, but with more strength than I expected. Victoria's head whipped toward me, her smile frozen in place but her eyes wide with fury. "Mother, don't be ridiculous. There's nothing to think about." Mr. Roberts closed the file firmly. "Then there will be no signing today. Mrs. Sullivan, you can take these documents home, review them at your leisure, and return if you decide this is what you want." I looked at him, gratitude welling in my chest. "Thank you," I whispered. Victoria stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the marble floor. Her mask of charm cracked as she snapped, "This is absurd. She doesn't understand what she's doing. You're just confusing her." Mr. Roberts didn't flinch. "On the contrary, I think she understands perfectly. This is her decision, not yours." The room went cold. Victoria grabbed her purse, her movements sharp. "Come on, Mother. We're leaving." I rose slowly, my knees weak but my resolve stronger than it had been in months. As we walked out of the office, I caught Mr. Roberts' eye. He gave me a small nod, subtle but reassuring, as if to say, "You're not alone." But the moment we stepped into the sunlight outside, Victoria's facade dropped completely. Her hand clamped onto my arm, dragging me toward the car. "What the hell was that?" she hissed. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" My voice shook, but I met her glare. "I just need time to think." Her laugh was sharp, bitter. "Time to think? You don't have time, Mother. You're old, you're fragile, and you don't know how to handle money. You'll lose everything without me. Is that what you want? To end up on the street?" I stopped walking, pulling my arm free. For the first time in months, I didn't shrink under her words. "No," I said quietly. "What I want is to understand what I'm signing before I give away everything your father and I built." Her face hardened, her beauty twisted into something cruel. "You'll regret this," she spat. "You'll regret ever doubting me." She stormed ahead, leaving me standing by the car, my body shaking but my spirit flickering to life. For the first time I saw my daughter clearly, not as the little girl I once rocked to sleep, not as the young woman I supported through school and heartbreak, but as someone willing to destroy me for money. And for the first time I realized I wasn't powerless. The car ride home was silent except for the hum of the engine and the occasional impatient tap of Victoria's nails against the steering wheel. I sat stiffly in the passenger seat, my hands clasped tightly in my lap. My daughter's face was a mask of controlled fury, her jaw set, her lips pressed thin. I could feel the tension radiating off her like heat. Every mile felt heavier, the weight of unspoken threats filling the air between us. When she finally pulled into the driveway, she didn't bother helping me out of the car the way she sometimes did in public. She stormed toward the front door, her heels stabbing into the concrete like weapons. I followed slowly, my legs shaky but my mind racing. Something had shifted back in that bank office. For the first time since Robert's death, I had felt the faintest whisper of control, of choice inside the house. Victoria spun around to face me, her eyes blazing. "What the hell were you thinking back there?" she demanded. "Do you have any idea how humiliating that was for me? For us?" I stood in the doorway, my fingers gripping the strap of my purse like it was a lifeline. "I wasn't ready," I said softly. "Not ready?" She laughed bitterly, shaking her head. "You think the world is going to wait for you to be ready? You're living in a fantasy, Mother. Dad is gone. The bills, the taxes, the estate, these things don't wait. And if you keep hesitating, you're going to lose everything." Her words hit me like stones, but I forced myself not to flinch. I just want to understand what I'm signing," I said. "You don't need to understand," she snapped. "That's what I'm here for. That's why I'm doing this. To protect you from your own ignorance. You think you can handle lawyers, bankers, investments? You can barely figure out how to use the remote control." Her cruelty cut deeper than she realized, but this time, instead of shrinking, I felt anger stir in my chest. "I may be old, Victoria, but I am not stupid," I said quietly, surprising even myself. Her eyes narrowed, studying me like I was an opponent instead of her mother. "Don't test me," she whispered. "You think you can stand in my way? I'm your daughter. Everything you have is already mine by right. If you don't make this easy, I'll make it hard." She brushed past me, her perfume sharp in the air, and disappeared up the stairs, leaving me standing in the hallway with my heart pounding. For years I had believed love was stronger than greed. For years I had believed my daughter loved me unconditionally. But standing there listening to her footsteps retreat, I knew the truth. She didn't see me as a mother anymore. She saw me as an obstacle. That night I lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling. Memories played in my mind like old film reels. Victoria as a child, her hand in mine as we crossed the street, her laughter as she spun in a new dress, her tears when she fell and scraped her knee. I remembered holding her through the night when she had a fever, whispering lullabies until she drifted off. How had we come to this moment, where she looked at me not with love but with calculation? Sometime after midnight, I rose and walked quietly to Robert's study, the room I rarely entered since his death. His desk was still cluttered with papers, his chair pushed back as though he might return at any moment. I sat down and opened the drawers, searching through files I had always left untouched. Receipts, tax documents, letters, all of it was overwhelming, but I forced myself to look. And then, tucked inside a folder marked estate planning, I found it. A letter. My name written in Robert's handwriting. My hands trembled as I unfolded the paper, my eyes blurring with tears as I read his words. "Margaret, if you're reading this, it means I didn't make it home. I know you trust Victoria, but be careful. She loves appearances more than anything else. If you ever feel pressured, go to Anthony Roberts at the bank. He's an honest man. Don't let anyone, not even our children, convince you to give away your rights. The assets are yours. Protect yourself. Protect your future." I pressed the letter to my chest, sobbing quietly in the dark. Robert had known. He had seen something in Victoria I hadn't wanted to admit, and he had left me a warning, a lifeline. The next morning I folded the letter and tucked it into my purse. When Victoria appeared in the kitchen, her tone was falsely cheerful, her smile stretched too wide. "Morning, Mother," she said, pouring herself coffee. "I made an appointment with the lawyer this afternoon. We're going to finalize the estate documents." I sipped my tea slowly, my hand steady despite the storm inside me. "I'll think about it," I said calmly. Her cup froze halfway to her lips. "What do you mean, think about it?" "There's nothing to think about. I found a letter from your father," I said softly, watching her carefully. Her eyes flickered with something, fear maybe, but it vanished quickly behind a tight smile. "What kind of letter?" "One meant for me," I replied. "He told me to be careful. He told me not to sign anything I don't understand." Her hand tightened around her cup until I thought it might shatter. "He was old, Mother. Probably confused when he wrote it. Don't cling to the past. You need to trust me." But now I knew the truth. Trust was the very thing she wanted to steal. That afternoon when she tried to drag me into the lawyer's office, I refused. Her voice rose, sharp and venomous, but I stood my ground. "I won't be signing anything today," I said firmly. "Not until I've had independent advice." Her face twisted, and for the first time I saw her mask slip completely. "Fine," she spat. "But don't think this is over. You can't fight me forever." Maybe not forever, I thought as I clutched Robert's letter in my purse. But long enough to remind her that I wasn't just a pawn in her game. And for the first time I started to believe I could win. The following days were a battlefield of silence and daggers hidden behind smiles. Victoria barely spoke to me except for clipped commands or cold reminders of appointments she expected me to attend. Every meal was eaten in strained quiet, her fork clinking against her plate like a metronome ticking away my remaining piece. But I had Robert's letter now, folded neatly in my purse wherever I went, like a shield pressed close to my heart. It gave me strength, even as she tried to chip away at my resolve. One afternoon, when Victoria was out, I gathered the courage to call the bank. My hand shook as I dialed the number, terrified she might return before I finished. "May I speak to Anthony Roberts, please?" I asked the receptionist, my voice trembling. Moments later, a calm baritone came on the line. "Mrs. Caldwell?" he said gently, and I could almost hear the warmth in his tone. "I'm so sorry for your loss. How can I help you today? I hesitated, the words catching in my throat. Robert, my husband, he told me to reach out to you if I ever felt pressured. And I do. I don't understand what's happening with the estate. My daughter, she wants me to sign everything over. I don't know what's right. There was a pause, then his voice grew firm but kind. You were wise to call me. Your husband left very clear instructions. He wanted everything in your name first. The estate isn't complicated, but if you sign the papers she's pushing, you'll lose control. Don't sign anything until we meet privately. A wave of relief washed over me, and for the first time in weeks, I felt like I wasn't alone. We arranged to meet the next day discreetly without Victoria's knowledge. But secrecy, I would soon learn, has a price. That evening as I prepared dinner, I sensed Victoria's eyes on me, sharper than knives. She stood in the doorway, arms crossed. Who were you on the phone with today? She asked casually, too casually my heart skipped, but I forced a smile. Just the pharmacy. I needed to refill my prescription. Her gaze lingered, searching for cracks in my story. At last, she smirked and walked away, but my knees nearly gave out once she was gone. She knew. Somehow she always knew. The next morning I slipped out while she was showering, my purse clutched tightly to my side. My steps quickened as I neared the bank, each one a prayer that she wouldn't appear behind me. When I finally sat across from Anthony Roberts in his office, I nearly collapsed with relief. He was a tall man with kind eyes, his suit crisp but not intimidating. He listened patiently as I explained everything, nodding thoughtfully. Then he leaned forward, lowering his voice. Mrs. Caldwell, your husband protected you well. All the accounts, the investments, the properties, they're secure in your name. Victoria has no legal claim unless you sign them over. Do you understand? Right now you hold the power. The word stunned me. Power. A word I hadn't felt applied to me in decades. All these years I had been the background figure, supporting wife, obedient mother, the shadow to Robert's presence and Victoria's ambitions. But now, for the first time, I was the one holding the pieces. I don't want to fight my daughter, I whispered, tears burning my eyes. But I also don't want to be erased. Anthony's voice softened. Then don't. Let her believe she's in control, but keep your rights safe. We can set up safeguards, protections she can't bypass. She'll never know until it's too late. I nodded, my heart both heavy and lifted at once. Perhaps Robert had been right. Perhaps the pawn could become the queen after all. But when I returned home, Victoria was waiting. She sat at the kitchen table, her laptop open, her fingers drumming against the wood. Where were you? She asked coolly. At the park, I lied smoothly. I needed air. Her eyes narrowed, her lips curling into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Funny. You don't even like the park. The tension stretched between us like a wire ready to snap, but I held her gaze for once. Something in her faltered just for a second, before she shut her laptop with a sharp snap and walked away. That night I couldn't sleep. I sat by the window, staring at the moon, clutching Robert's letter. My mind replayed Anthony's words. You hold the power. But power without courage is nothing. If I wanted to survive this war with Victoria, I had to stop hiding. The following week was a dance of pretense. I let her think she was winning, nodding during her lectures, pretending to skim documents she shoved in front of me, but never signing. She grew increasingly frustrated, her patience wearing thinner by the day. You're wasting time, she snapped one morning, slamming a stack of papers onto the table. The longer you stall, the harder this gets. You think people respect weakness? They don't. They'll eat you alive. I folded my hands, my voice calm. Then it's a good thing I'm not weak. Her head snapped up, eyes wide with shock at my defiance. For a moment she looked like a child again, caught off guard, vulnerable. But then the mask returned and she hissed, Careful, mother. You don't know who you're playing with. But I did. For the first time I saw her clearly. Not my daughter, but a rival. And if she wanted a game, I would play it. In the quiet hours when she was gone, I studied Robert's files, teaching myself what I had ignored all my life. Bank statements, property deeds, investment reports. I devoured them hungrily, scribbling notes, circling names. Slowly the fog lifted. I began to see the map of our lives, the empire Robert had built, and the traps Victoria wanted to set. And then came the night that changed everything. I woke to the sound of footsteps outside my bedroom door. Slow, deliberate, too careful to be innocent. My breath caught as the handle turned slightly, then stopped. A pause. Silence. Then the sound of retreating steps fading down the hallway. The next morning, Victoria acted as though nothing had happened, her voice sugary, her smile sweet. But I knew. She had been testing me, watching to see if I was awake, if I was afraid. And she was right. I was afraid. But fear no longer paralyzed me. It sharpened me. Because now, I wasn't just fighting for money or property. I was fighting for survival, and I swore, as I looked across the breakfast table at my daughter's calculating eyes, that I would not lose. Days bled into each other. Yet every moment with Victoria felt like walking a tightrope strung high above a pit of knives. She watched me constantly, her eyes flicking over me as if I were prey she hadn't yet decided how to devour. And yet, beneath the surface, I felt myself changing. Where once I had been fragile, shrinking in her shadow, I was beginning to stand straighter. I rehearsed answers before she could trap me. I memorized the smallest details of every paper she placed in front of me, knowing that knowledge was now my only weapon. Then came the morning she announced, without preamble, "We're going to the bank today." My stomach clenched, though I forced my expression into bland surprise. The bank? Yes. She was already dressed in her sleek black suit, her hair pulled back in that severe knot she favored. "It's time we wrap this up. You've dragged your feet long enough." I wanted to argue, to stall again, but something in her tone told me she would not be denied. So I nodded, quietly gathering my things. As I slipped Robert's letter into my purse, my fingers brushed against a scrap of paper Anthony had given me at our last meeting. His cell number. And below it, a single sentence written in his careful hand. "If she pressures you, write it down. I'll be watching." The drive to the bank was silent, tense. Victoria's hands gripped the steering wheel too tightly, her knuckles pale. I sat stiffly beside her, my heart pounding like a drum. I had to be careful. One wrong word, one misplaced glance, and she'd know everything. When we arrived, she strode inside like she owned the place, her heels clicking against the marble floor. I followed more slowly, clutching my purse. The receptionist greeted us politely, leading us to Anthony's office. Victoria barely acknowledged the woman, her focus razor-sharp. Anthony rose as we entered, his face a mask of professionalism. But his eyes met mine for a brief moment, and in them I saw reassurance. A silent promise, "I've got you." "Mrs. Caldwell, Miss Caldwell," he said smoothly, gesturing for us to sit. "How can I help you today?" Victoria wasted no time. She slid a folder across his desk, her voice brisk. "My mother is ready to transfer the estate into my name. I've prepared all the documents. We just need your signature as witness." Anthony glanced at the folder, then at me. "Is that correct, Mrs. Caldwell?" he asked, his tone neutral. My throat tightened. Victoria's eyes bored into me, daring me to contradict her. For a long moment I said nothing, my pulse roaring in my ears. Then slowly I reached into my purse. My fingers found a pen and the scrap of paper. With deliberate care I wrote a single line. "I am being forced." I folded the note into my trembling hands and slid it across the desk as though it were nothing more than a nervous tick. Anthony's eyes flicked down just for a second before he nodded. "I see," he said smoothly. "Well, let's go through these documents carefully, shall we?" Victoria leaned back in her chair, smirking. She thought she'd won already. But Anthony began reading each page aloud, his voice calm and clear, pointing out every clause, every implication. With each word I saw her confidence waver. She interrupted once, twice, growing sharper. "That's not necessary," she snapped finally. "Just have her sign." Anthony's tone hardened. "Mrs. Caldwell has every right to understand what she's signing. And unless she's fully comfortable, nothing moves forward. That is the law." Her face flushed red, but she bit back her retort, her nails tapping furiously against the armrest. Then he turned to me, sliding the final page forward. "Mrs. Caldwell," he said carefully, "you are under no obligation to sign this. Do you wish to proceed?" For a heartbeat the room was silent. My daughter's eyes burned into me, her fury barely contained. But I thought of Robert's letter, of the nights I had spent studying, of the strength I had begun to claim. "No," I whispered, my voice trembling but firm. "I do not wish to proceed." Victoria shot to her feet. "What are you doing?" she hissed, her face contorted with rage. "Do you have any idea what you're throwing away?" But Anthony's voice cut through her fury like a blade. "Miss Caldwell, I suggest you calm yourself. Your mother has made her decision." She rounded on me, her hands shaking. "You'll regret this," she spat. "Don't you see? You can't handle any of this. You'll drown without me." I looked up at her, my heart breaking and hardening all at once. "Then let me drown," I said softly. For the first time, she looked truly stunned. Her mouth opened, closed, then opened again, but no words came. She stormed out instead. The door slamming so hard the glass rattled, I collapsed into my chair, trembling. Anthony leaned forward, lowering his voice. "You were brave, Mrs. Caldwell. Very brave. But be cautious. She will not let this go easily." I nodded, my tears spilling over. "I know. But for once I feel like I've done something right." That night, the house was a battlefield of silence. Victoria didn't speak to me, didn't even look at me. But I could feel the storm brewing in her. Dangerous and unpredictable. I locked my bedroom door, though I doubted it would hold her if she truly wanted in. And I was right to fear. 2 nights later, I woke to the sound of glass shattering downstairs. My heart leapt into my throat as I grabbed the lamp from my nightstand. I crept to the door, pressing my ear against it. Voices. Male voices. One of them was Victoria's. "You promised me it would be easy," she was saying, her tone desperate. "Just make it look like an accident. She's old, no one will question it." My blood froze. My own daughter. My flesh and blood. She wasn't just trying to take my estate anymore. She was planning to take my life. That I backed away from the door, my knees shaking so badly I nearly collapsed. What could I do? Where could I go? Then I remembered Anthony's words. "You hold the power." And I realized, power meant nothing if I didn't use it. I pulled out my phone, hands trembling, and dialed the number he had given me. He answered on the first ring. "Mrs. Caldwell? Help me," I whispered, my voice breaking. "She's here. She's trying to. Stay calm," he said firmly. "Stay where you are. Lock your door. I'm calling the police right now." Downstairs, the voices grew louder, angrier. I heard footsteps on the stairs, heavy and deliberate. My door rattled once, twice, then the pounding began. "Mother!" Victoria's voice shrieked. "Open this door. Don't make me do this." Tears streamed down my face as I clutched Robert's letter to my chest. I had never felt more alone, or more determined to survive. Because now this wasn't just about property or money, it was about life itself. And I refused to give her mine. The pounding on the door escalated, echoing through the old house like a war drum. I pressed myself against the wall, my breath caught in my chest. Each second stretched into eternity. The lamp in my hand felt heavy, almost symbolic. A fragile weapon for a situation spiraling completely out of control. "Mother, open the door. Don't make me call the police." Victoria's voice rang sharp and frantic from below. The men with her were silent now, but their presence was palpable in the groan of the staircase. My mind raced, scanning every possible escape, every locked door, every potential trap. And then I remembered the back door that I slipped quietly from my bedroom, each step measured, careful not to make a sound. The living room was dark, shadows stretching across the furniture. I could see their silhouettes now, Victoria at the forefront, flanked by 2 men whose faces I still hadn't committed to memory. They looked like hired enforcers, muscle sent to intimidate, not reason. I reached the back door and tugged at the lock. It held. I exhaled softly, relief mixing with fear. But as I opened it, the crisp night air brushed my face, sharp and invigorating. I ran barefoot across the lawn, the gravel crunching under my feet, adrenaline lending strength to limbs that felt like lead moments before. I didn't stop until I reached the street, where the neighbor's porch light was on. Mr. Thompson, a retired firefighter, appeared in his robe, eyes wide. "Mrs. Caldwell, what's going on?" "They're trying to, my daughter, she's here with men." I gasped, struggling to articulate the nightmare. "I think they want to hurt me." Without hesitation, he grabbed his phone. "I'm calling 911. Get inside, stay safe." He ushered me into his living room, locking the door behind me. The sound of sirens began to wail in the distance, growing louder with every heartbeat. Back at my house, the pounding had ceased, replaced by muttered curses and the sound of hurried retreat. Victoria cursed under her breath as the men pulled her away, the sirens forcing their exit. I sank into the couch, knees trembling, heart hammering, tears slipping freely. For the first time in months, I felt a strange mix of terror and relief. I had survived. Anthony's call came moments later, steady and calm. "Mrs. Caldwell, are you safe?" "Yes," I whispered, my voice raw. "For now." "Good. Police are on their way, and I've arranged for a temporary protective order. They won't be able to approach you or your property while the investigation continues." I nodded silently, feeling the weight of exhaustion crash down. But beneath it, a spark ignited, a realization. Fear had driven them to extremes, but it had also reminded me of something I had almost forgotten: my own strength. The next few days were a blur of legal procedures, police reports, and sleepless nights. Victoria and her enforcers were formally barred from contacting me, and my estate was secured under a protective trust. But the psychological warfare hadn't ended. Every call I didn't answer, every knock I didn't respond to, became another battle. Each time I reminded myself, this wasn't defiance, it was survival. At home, the silence was initially strange, almost suffocating. No one to comment on my meals, my clothes, my finances. No one to question every minor decision, every forgotten item. Yet, gradually I realized how liberating it was. I began walking through the house without fear, opening drawers and cupboards that had felt off-limits for years. I handled my finances, reorganized my paperwork, and began reading documents with renewed clarity. Every action, no matter how small, felt like reclaiming pieces of my stolen autonomy. One afternoon, Patricia Chen arrived. She had brought coffee and a gentle smile, a presence that was comforting in its steadiness. "You're doing remarkably well," she said, setting the cups on the table. "I'm surviving," I replied with a faint smile. "But it feels like more than survival. It feels like..." I trailed off, uncertain. "Like I'm finally waking up." "That's exactly it," Patricia said, nodding. "You've been under siege, but you're reclaiming your life. And that's a powerful thing." Her words resonated deeply. I thought of the countless hours I had spent doubting myself, questioning whether I was overreacting, imagining problems where none existed. But the evidence was irrefutable. The theft, the coercion, the attempted institutionalization. They had shown their true colors, and in doing so, they had forced me to awaken. Over the following weeks, I reached out to support networks for elders who had experienced similar abuse. The stories I heard were staggering. Children manipulating inheritance, coercing parents into nursing homes, controlling finances through intimidation. There was a quiet epidemic of elder abuse hidden behind polite smiles and reassurances of care. Each story strengthened my resolve. Each voice reinforced the notion that I was not alone. The children, Emma, Jake, and Josh, became a source of unexpected solace. Arranged meetings in public parks, under carefully monitored conditions, allowed me to reconnect without fear of Victoria's interference. Their laughter, their curiosity, their innocence reminded me of what was truly worth protecting. Not the money, not the house, but the integrity of my own life. Victoria, predictably, attempted to test boundaries. Calls during the day, messages at night, veiled threats disguised as concern. But each time I documented the interactions, sent copies to Anthony, and remained firm. She had overplayed her hand. Her attempts to intimidate me only served to highlight the strength I had quietly nurtured over the past months. One evening, after a particularly long day of legal meetings, I sat in the garden, watching the sunset bleed orange and gold across the sky. My hands were still, resting on my lap. I realized how much power fear had once held over me. It had dictated my movements, my decisions, even my sense of self. But now, for the first time, I felt the true meaning of autonomy. I was making decisions for myself, not for my daughter, not for anyone else. The letter from Sarah arrived a week later. I held it in my hands, unsure whether to open it. My instincts screamed caution, but curiosity prevailed. She had written at length, acknowledging the manipulation, recognizing her fear-driven actions, and offering no excuses. Her words were honest. Perhaps for the first time in a year, I read it slowly, savoring each sentence. She spoke of therapy, reflection, and a desire to rebuild, but on my terms. There was no coercion, no demands, no guilt-laden pleas. Just acknowledgement. And in that I saw a glimmer of hope. Not for immediate reconciliation, not for naive forgiveness, but for the possibility of respect, the possibility that boundaries could exist and be honored. That I placed the letter on the table, my fingers lingering on the paper. I realized that true power was not in confrontation, but in control over oneself. I had faced manipulation, coercion, and betrayal, yet here I was, standing unbroken, capable of choosing my own path. And so life began to settle into a rhythm of cautious confidence. I continued my work with elder support groups, sharing my story, advocating for awareness, and mentoring those who were beginning to reclaim their own lives. Each interaction reinforced the truth I had come to embrace. Age does not diminish autonomy, experience is not weakness, and no one, not even a child, has the right to define the limits of another person's life. Saturday visits with the grandchildren became cherished routines. I enforced boundaries with quiet firmness. Emma, Jake, and Josh thrived under the new dynamic, learning that love does not require surrender, that respect must be mutual, and that even in complicated family dynamics, innocence can be preserved. Victoria's absence became a necessary silence, a reminder of the consequences of manipulation and greed. She remained a distant figure, occasionally attempting indirect communication, but I was prepared. Anthony, Patricia, and Robert provided unwavering support, ensuring that legal protections remained firm, and that any misstep would be met with immediate intervention. Through it all, I discovered an unexpected sense of purpose. I was no longer merely surviving, I was thriving. Each day brought new challenges but also new triumphs. I found joy in small victories, a correctly filed document, a laughter-filled afternoon with the grandchildren, a quiet morning in the garden free from intrusion. The journey had been harrowing, but it had revealed a truth I would carry forever. That autonomy, once reclaimed, is unshakable. Fear can intimidate, manipulation can threaten, but a person's awareness, courage, and resolve form a shield no one can penetrate. And as the months passed, the quiet strength I nurtured within myself became an unspoken testament to others. That no matter the pressures, no matter the threats, it is always possible to reclaim one's life, to assert one's rights, and to walk forward with dignity and tact. I finally understood that I was not defined by their greed, their fear, or their control. I was defined by my choices, my resilience, and my unwavering commitment to my own freedom. And that, I realized, was the most powerful legacy anyone could leave behind. The next morning dawned with a crisp clarity that felt almost symbolic. Light streamed through the kitchen windows, illuminating the neat piles of documents I had prepared the night before. Robert Martinez had arrived early, a quiet reassurance in his tailored suit. Patricia Chun was already there, checking on the status of the protective trust and the newly frozen accounts. Together they formed a barrier I knew Victoria could not breach. I sipped my coffee slowly, savoring the calm. It was deceptive, of course. Calm was a temporary state in a storm that had yet to fully pass. But I welcomed it nonetheless. Today was the day I would finally close the chapter that had haunted me for months. The phone rang, Victoria, predictably. I let it go to voicemail. A few moments later, another number flashed. It was Sarah. Her tone was tentative, cautious. "Mom, can we talk?" she asked. I paused, holding the receiver. There was an opportunity here. A chance to test the waters without surrendering control. "Sarah," I said carefully, "we can talk, but only under my terms." She agreed, and we scheduled a meeting at a neutral location. A small cafe downtown, away from the prying eyes of family and legal threats. The cafe was quiet, early morning patrons scattered, sunlight filtering through frosted windows. I arrived first, choosing a table near the back where I could observe the entrance. Robert and Patricia followed discreetly, seated nearby but out of direct sight. When Sarah arrived, she looked smaller than I remembered, almost fragile in her anxiety. Derek hovered behind her, confident yet restrained by the awareness that I was no longer a passive target. "Mom," Sarah began, voice trembling slightly, "thank you for meeting me." I nodded, keeping my expression neutral. "You're welcome. Let's be clear. This is about boundaries, not reconciliation." Her eyes widened slightly. "I understand. I want to explain. I've been in therapy and I think I finally see what I did wrong. Not everything, but some things." I studied her, noting the sincerity in her voice, the tentative posture, the absence of manipulative undertones. It was rare, almost shocking, to see genuine accountability. "Go on," I said. She spoke slowly, deliberately about fear and control, about the panic she felt thinking she could lose me, how that fear had warped her perception of love and care. She admitted the theft, the coercion, the constant pressure to move me into a facility I had not chosen. She did not excuse her behavior. She named it. Derek interjected a few times, trying to soften the narrative, but I held firm. "Derek," I said calmly, "I want honesty, not justification. Not excuses." He quieted, realizing that the old dynamics no longer applied. I was not the frightened mother who had once bent to their will. I was a woman who had fought back, armed with knowledge, evidence, and a newfound understanding of her own strength. After what felt like hours, Sarah concluded her explanation. There were tears, quiet remorse, and a sense of vulnerability I had never seen in her before. "I know I can't undo what I did," she said softly. "I don't expect immediate forgiveness, but I want to do better. For you, for the kids." I studied her, thinking not about the past but about the future. "Sarah," I said finally, "trust isn't rebuilt with words. It's rebuilt with actions. And actions take time." We left the cafe together, but on different terms. The children would continue to see me in supervised, structured settings. No overnight visits, no unmonitored access to finances or private spaces. I would control the parameters. It was firm but fair. Love, I realized, was not about surrender. It was about respect, and the weeks that followed, I settled into a rhythm I had not experienced in years. The home was quiet, peaceful. The legal protections remained ironclad, and I maintained close communication with Anthony, Robert, and Patricia. I organized my affairs, reviewing investments, updating my will, and ensuring that no loopholes could ever be exploited again. The grandchildren visits became a source of joy, filled with laughter and learning, free from the shadow of coercion. Emma insisted on teaching me her new spelling words, Jake brought soccer photos, and Josh insisted we bake cookies together. Their innocence was a balm, reminding me of the stakes of this struggle. Freedom, dignity, and autonomy were not abstract concepts. They were the foundations upon which the lives of future generations could be built. Victoria, meanwhile, had retreated. Legal consequences and the unwavering barriers I had set discouraged further attempts at interference. She called occasionally, each time met with silence or documented refusal. The threat she had represented began to fade, replaced by a cautionary distance that underscored my victory. I took to journaling, documenting the experience not just for my own catharsis, but to share with other elders facing similar circumstances. Each entry became a roadmap, a blueprint for recognizing manipulation, reclaiming control, and asserting independence. Through these writings, I connected with a network of women and men who had faced the same insidious erosion of autonomy. Their stories resonated deeply, forming a tapestry of resilience that reinforced my own journey. Months passed. Sarah continued her therapy, making small but meaningful steps toward accountability. Supervised meetings with the grandchildren became predictable and structured, fostering healthy relationships without fear of coercion. Derek remained on the periphery, his arrogance tempered by repeated legal interventions and the undeniable reality of his mother-in-law's strength. One autumn evening, as leaves fell in a golden cascade across my yard, I sat on the porch with a cup of tea, reflecting on the journey. The fear, the theft, the betrayal, all of it had been a crucible. I had emerged tempered, resolute, and aware of the formidable strength inherent in asserting one's rights. Patricia joined me, smiling gently. "You've changed the narrative," she said. "Not just for yourself but for others. Your story will inspire many." I nodded, feeling the weight of truth in her words. "It's not just about surviving," I said. "It's about reclaiming life, dignity, and the power to make choices. And it's about showing that age does not equate to helplessness." She reached over, placing a comforting hand on mine. "Exactly. You've turned fear into empowerment." The children's laughter echoed faintly from the park across the street. I knew they were safe, nurtured, and learning lessons I could not have imparted through words alone. They were witnessing respect, boundaries, and autonomy in practice. A living example of integrity that would carry forward. I felt a profound sense of peace. The legal battles, the confrontations, the manipulations, they had tested me, yes, but they had also awakened a strength I had almost forgotten. I was not a victim. I was a guardian of my own life, a defender of dignity, and a witness to the truth that autonomy is non-negotiable at any age. And in that moment, with the sun dipping behind the horizon, casting a warm glow across my garden, I finally understood something I had always known but never fully embraced. Fear can be confronted, manipulation can be documented, and my life, can be reclaimed. Fully. Completely. On my own terms. For those who may be watching or reading or listening, know this. No one has the right to define your value, your autonomy, or your life. Fight, assert, document, and protect. Seek support, but most importantly, trust in your own judgment. Age does not diminish your voice, your intellect, or your rights. And sometimes the very act of standing up for yourself becomes the most profound legacy you can leave. I rose from the porch chair, inhaling the crisp air deeply, savoring the moment. Behind me, the house stood as it had for decades, unchanged, yet transformed by the assertion of my will. Ahead, the world waited, not with threats or demands, but with possibilities, and this time I would meet it entirely on my own terms. If you or someone you love has ever felt controlled, manipulated, or underestimated because of age, listen closely. You have the power to fight back. Independence isn't something that can be taken. It's something you claim every single day. And remember this, sometimes the people who claim to love you the most are the ones trying to take your life from you. But when you stand up, when you document, when you protect yourself, that's when they truly see you. So if you've ever faced manipulation or betrayal, don't stay silent. Share your story in the comments, hit subscribe to hear more real-life battles and victories, and most importantly, never let anyone make you feel powerless, no matter your age, because your life, your choices, your dignity, they're yours. And it's time to take them back.